Our scripture today is a continuation of some of the Beatitudes, specifically looking at salt and light, which have become metaphors for Christians. No matter where you are around the world, when you hear salt and light, it means something. It's a bit of a call to arms almost, who we're supposed to be. The scripture starts off with Jesus saying, you're called to be salt. If salt loses its taste, its saltiness, then it's no good and it's thrown out. Which would have had people sitting up immediately because salt never loses its saltiness. So it does not matter how tired we get, how worn out we get, how spread out we get, we do not lose the thing that Jesus has given us, that God has given us to make a difference. So that's the first thing. And if you'll notice, most of the time when Jesus is teaching, he always says something quite out of step to get people's attention. Now, it's often lost on us in the 21st century. We don't we don't often get the cultural cue or the reference or even the language properly. But back in the day, when this was being read out loud for the first time, and when Jesus was teaching for the first time, it would have made people stop and say, wait a minute. Salt doesn't lose its saltiness. And the underlying message is that we don't lose what it is that God is giving us. And then Jesus goes on to talk about how we're salt and light. Those are two things that are necessary for every single human being. When people talk about being blind, they talk about losing the light. For people who are not sight impaired, light makes all the difference. Light is how we see. In daytime it's the sun, in nighttime it's lamps, candles in Jesus' time, oil lamps. But there's a metaphor in there that we always have what we need. We are the ones that bring illumination, that make it possible for others to figure out what they're supposed to be, that are present for folks who are the ones who make a difference. So the salt and the light metaphors come right off the hop, right off the top of what Jesus is saying. Salt, aside from never losing our saltiness, salt is primarily a thing humans need. We can die if we have too little salt. And some of us are old enough to remember the whole movement about, 15, 20 years ago now, where salt was bad for you. It was not bad. Salt in excess is bad. Salty snacks, salt in places that shouldn't be is bad. If you have a reason to restrict salt, obviously not great. But we as humans need a certain amount. Jesus is also saying, salt is what gives food and life the flavor, the zest, the difference between the absolute bland and the truly wonderful is often salt. So two very, very primal things everybody, even children, would understand the value of. And Jesus saying, that's who you are. You are that fundamental to the process that you cannot be dismissed. And you have such a store of what that is, the base elements, that you will never be not able to do the work of God. There's never a point where you've lost your saltiness or you've lost your light. Those things don't exist. Reminding people that we are right in there at the beginning. There is no excuse for us to use to get out of being part of the community of God, the co-creators that we're called to be. And then Jesus continues on. He says, you've heard that I'm about breaking the law and breaking the prophets, saying they're redundant. And Jesus says, I'm not at all like that. And this is profoundly important in the Gospel of Matthew. Remember, Matthew is the rabbi of the New Testament. So everything he's doing is trying to make sure Jesus is situated within the Hebrew tradition. And this is another one of those times where Jesus is saying, I'm not here to tell you not to listen to the laws of the prophets. In fact, I'm here to fulfill what those laws and prophets are. A very, very different message. A message that actually does threaten the establishment, which is kind of what Jesus did anyway. But reminding people that all the laws, all the warnings of the prophets, They were there to help people turn back to God. They were not there meant to be restrictions. They were not meant to make life harder. They were there to help focus people and to make sure they lived according to the way God wanted. This is more than food laws or inheritance laws. This is basically how people treat each other with respect, how they work together to take care of each other, to be the community, to be the connection, the people Jesus says that God made us to be. And Jesus goes on and says, I'm not one law, one word or letter of the law is going to be changed until it's fulfilled. It's not going anywhere. It is what it is. No matter what people say is slander, it doesn't really matter, because Jesus knows what he was there about. And Jesus' followers knew and were learning what he was there about. He was there in the community. And he said, those who pay attention to law, who do what they need to do, you're already inside. You're already part of the community of God. And those who try to turn people away, who teach them otherwise, basically false teachers, those who take the rules and laws and prophets and twist them into their own wants, they are so far out of the connection with God, they don't even realize how far out they are. And then he says, you have righteousness. The presence of God in you is even more powerful than those people employed in the temple. And we can extend that to people employed in the church and people employed in other places, in the institutional church. If you live by the laws, if you live recognizing that you are part of the job, that you're part of the work, that you have what it takes, you've got the basic elements that God has given everybody to make life better, there's more righteousness in you than all the people paid to do the jobs the establishment has requested of us. Jesus telling the people, and through them to us, that we are ready, we are whole, we are complete. There's not anything lacking in us. Sure, we can learn more, we can practice more, we can get better at certain doing elements, but our very being, our core of being, that's already complete. That already has everything we need. And our being is able to touch each other's, because all of us have the core elements. No one is lacking. No one is getting excess, no one is getting less. All of us are given the amount, and the metaphors of salt and light make life taste better, make us be able to see what's going on. Those are part of how Jesus has identified how we're able to communicate with each other, see what's going on in the world, make it better. We have the structure, we have the talent, we have the calling. And if you're people who are without very much and do not have political autonomy, that was an incredible message. So too is it for those of us who do have a lot more political freedom and independence, including the freedom to be able to totally disregard the Gospels as they come by. But don't. Pay attention. You already have the gifts. You already have the calling. You already have the ability. Go be salt and light. Make a difference. That is what God has asked us to do.